He was once a warrior, one who never bowed, never backed down. But now, beneath snow cold as blades, a battle horse bleeds, trapped in a predator's circle. Not because he was weak, but because he carried memories no one dared let live. And then she appeared. Not a hero, not a savior, just a woman who had once killed the very horse she tried to save, with hands still shaking from blind faith in her own righteousness. Amid the howls that tore through the mountains, wind slicing skin, and a sky as silent as a grave, two forsaken souls met. No names, no sides, only a bloodstained past and one question left unanswered. If she saves him, who will save the truth, a whole system buried beneath the snow? The snow fell like salt poured into an open wound. Wind lashed like a whip, tearing through brittle pine branches. There were no sounds, except the lone cry of something half-dead echoing between the cliffs. But the horse still stood. Didn't fall, didn't kneel. Even as blood soaked its rear leg. Its coat clumped in dark red streaks. One eye nearly shut. The other, still open, still staring ahead. 3 days. No herd. No food. No shelter. And now, they had caught its scent. From the tree line, wolves slipped out like smoke. 1 in front. 2 behind. 6 circling. No hurry. They knew this one wouldn't get far. The horse braced. Hooves slammed into the ice. Not to defend. To warn. I'm still alive. And if I die, I'm taking one of you with me. They didn't react. Only lowered themselves. In sync. As if someone had given a signal. The wind halted just 1 second. Snow slowed midair. And the world held its breath. Right as a headlight split through the white. Up on the ridge, the engine coughed. Then roared. A sound like claws scraping the night. The horse didn't turn. It didn't need to. It already knew. The one had come. No one knew exactly where it came from. Only the scars didn't lie. Along its neck, faded stitches. Under its belly, the branded number, seared in iron. On its left shoulder, a patch of skin where no hair ever grew back. That horse had once been a military training asset. Not the kind meant for joyrides, but for charging through bombs, fire, and death when others couldn't. It had survived 2 evacuations, 4 redeployments, and 1 explosion right in the center of a training ground where no one else made it out. It remained standing, unmoving, unafraid. Later on, they stopped calling it by number. They called it Ash. The ashes. What's left after everything else has burned away. Then Ash vanished. Not by command. Not on a lead rope. It escaped from a classified transport convoy. The kind where nothing comes back. They said it got lost. But those who knew better said it was taken care of. Ash ran through the forest in the middle of a storm, carrying a torn body, and a memory its handlers never wanted it to keep. 3 days. No herd. No water. No shelter. And then they came. From the thick shadows, wolves slipped out like smoke. 1 in front. 2 behind. 6 formed a circle. They didn't lunge. They waited. They knew this one had survived war. But they could smell it now. It was weak. And it was alone. The first one charged. Ash twisted, front hoof swung hard. A crack. The wolf went skidding across the ice like splintered wood. The second bit deep into its flank. Teeth sank in. Skin tore. Blood sprayed like mist. Ash jerked violently. The flesh ripped, but it didn't cry out. It simply turned, backing up to a dead pine trunk. Pressed its spine to the wood. Not to defend, but to send a message. I'm still alive. And if I go down, one of you is coming with me. Each kick slowed. Each step spilled blood. Each toss of the head drew another red line in the snow. By the seventh strike, Ash collapsed. One hind leg snapped. Left hip blackened with bruises. Its vision blurred. But the head still lifted. Ears still alert. And breath still poured out in clouds of searing heat. Not from pain, but from a rage too deep to name. The wolves closed the circle. They felt the ending now. They moved slowly, step by step, ready to shred apart a symbol no longer worth anything. And then, light appeared. A lone beam tore through the snowstorm. Pale yellow. Flickering. Still. The wolves froze. Their eyes blinked, not because of the light, but because of what stood behind it. Not prey, but a different form of despair. The storm wasn't in the forecast. But Nora Whitaker had never trusted forecasts. Just like she no longer trusted her own professional instincts. 3 years ago, her name had been featured on the front page of the Regional Veterinary Journal. The woman who could hear a heartbeat before the stethoscope even touched skin. A wild horse rescue vet with a strange kind of intuition. She didn't need lab results to know what a horse was afraid of. Until one day, she heard wrong. A young mare, not even a year old, was brought to the emergency shelter in Utah, hip torn open, unable to stand, breathing in ragged bursts. Nora chose emergency surgery. She ignored the recommendation to wait for stabilization. There's a 12% chance of survival, but I won't just stand here and watch it die, she said, pulling her mask on. The operation lasted only 19 minutes. At minute 20, the horse's heart stopped on its own. No response to defibrillation. No response to morphine. It died quietly, with its eyes still open. She had kept that horse alive through battlefield rescue, splinting, and transport. And then, it died in the surgical room, under the hands of the one who meant to save it. From that day forward, Nora disappeared from the veterinary world. She still carried her trauma kit, but only to punish herself. Today, on a freezing curve along the Buckskin Range, her utility vehicle's engine let out a screech. Like a snapped steel cable. Rear tires spun. The drivetrain locked. She shifted gears, nothing moved. Snow pounded against the windshield like hands knocking. She leaned back and exhaled, trying to suppress a cough. One hand reached into her driving gloves, preparing to check under the chassis. Then she saw it. At first, just a black shape with no clear form. Roughly 20 meters away, down a slope buried in white. The wolves had vanished. Only it remained, a half-collapsed creature, soaked in blood. Nora opened the door. The wind slammed into her like a blade. She stepped out. Her boots sank deep into soft snow by the roadside. Each step was slow, her breathing steady. Not from fear, but because she knew these moments too well. The horse in front of her didn't move, but it wasn't dead. One side still rose and fell with breath. Its right eye was still open, and it was looking at her. Not with a pleading look, not with blame, not begging, just looking, as if it had seen her before, as if it knew who she was. Nora stood frozen. The cold slipped under her coat like ice piercing the skin. But her body didn't shiver. She didn't need to get closer. Just that one look was enough for everything inside her chest to split open again. 3 years ago, she had stood just like this. Another horse, too weak to stand. Another final gaze, no anger, no accusation, just a silent question. Why interfere when all I wanted was to be left alone? And this time, the horse said nothing. But the silence was just as heavy. Nora bent down. Her hand touched the zipper on the trauma kit. Not because she was ready to save, but because she knew one thing for certain. If she turned her back, if she got in the car and drove away, then this time, there would be nothing left to save. Not even herself. She didn't have time to pray. No time to wonder what she was doing. Only reflex. And instinct. An instinct that looked like survival, but felt dangerously close to despair. Nora knelt beside Ash, the emergency tarp flapping violently in the wind, torn at one corner. She grabbed the largest roll of gauze left in her kit, damp. Not sterile. Just enough to stop the bleeding. Just enough to keep him from dying right in front of her. Horsehide was thick, but the blood still ran. Drop by drop, falling into snow already stained red. If you were me, you wouldn't keep trying, Nora muttered. But I can't. I can't let it happen again. She peeled off chunks of ice-caked mud from Ash's body, working to clean the bite wounds. Many already lightly necrotized from the cold. Bruised flesh. One area with bone exposed. No morphine. No anesthesia. Only a dull surgical knife and a half-used bottle of antiseptic from last year. Ash didn't move. But Nora knew, even though he lay still. He was awake. And he was enduring. She froze when she saw his right eye barely open, the gaze dull, but not extinguished. Not the look of pleading. Not surrender. Just a silent message. Do what you must. If I die, at least it won't be because I was left behind. The second gust hit like a blade. One of the tarp's anchor hooks snapped. Nora spun around to grab it. Her fingers tore against the edge of the metal. Her blood dripped onto Ash's wrappings. And no one could tell whose blood was whose anymore. A third howl echoed. This time, closer. Nora snapped her head around, hand reaching beneath the seat for the flare gun. No hesitation. No warning. Boom. A streak of red blasted into the sky. Then burst midair through the falling snow. Like a vein split open and left floating. In the moment the light spilled down the mountainside. Nora saw them. 2 wolves to the left. One scaling the rocks behind the truck. Their eyes not vicious, but hungry. Patient. Calculating. They didn't charge. They waited. For the human to walk away. But Nora didn't. She stood between them and Ash, shoulders trembling, breath ragged. But eyes locked. Her grip didn't loosen. I didn't come here to be a hero, she whispered, as if to herself. I came here to stop being the one who runs. The wind whipped harder. Temperature dropped to minus 24 degrees. Her breath crystallized on her scarf. The flashlight dimmed. Battery dying. Her hands were numb. She tore out the inner lining of her coat, ripped it with her teeth and gloves, and wrapped it around the wound on Ash's frozen leg. Her movements were slow, not from weakness, but because she was laying pieces of herself onto a life that should have already ended. Ash let out a sudden breath. She spun back to him. He didn't convulse. He only trembled, as if trying to shift closer to her. She placed a hand on his forehead. For the first time, not to check anything. Just to say, I'm here. Another hour passed. No more howls. No more lights. No other people. Only wind. Blood. Ice. And a thread of life stretched thin between two beings. One who used to be a doctor. One who used to be a soldier. Both written off by a world that no longer saw their worth. Ash stopped breathing. Nora didn't notice it right away. She was still wrapping his leg wound, her hands stiff as wood. Head bowed low as the wind whipped across her face again and again. But in that moment, silence swept in. No familiar hiss from Ash's chest. No white vapor from his nostrils. Only a void of cold. So cold it felt like something had just left. And taken the last piece of her with it. Nora looked up. Stared into Ash's eyes. His eyes were still open. But unresponsive. She raised a trembling hand to his nose. Nothing. A paralysis spread through her body. Her heart didn't race. It just fell. Like someone had stomped on her chest. And everything inside shattered without a sound. Then suddenly, she screamed. No! You don't get to die here. Not like Callie. Nora collapsed. Both fists slamming down onto Ash's chest with every ounce of strength she had left. His ribcage felt like wood. His skin ice cold. She didn't count. She didn't shout 1, 2, 3. Just the raw instinct of someone pounding on a door that was closing fast. I couldn't save her. Don't do this to me again. You're not going to be another dead body in my life. She kept hitting. Bare hands cracking open until blood showed. Shoulders burning from the strain. Until finally, she started sobbing, gasping like a child. Don't go. I'm begging you. Just once, just this once, come back. She pressed her forehead to Ash's chest. Breath shallow, tears gathering on her frozen lashes. Her entire body trembled. Not from cold, but from fear. A fear she'd already lived through and never forgiven herself for. Callie. That name shot through her mind like a bullet ripping through a memory vault. The little mare with big eyes, limping legs. And a silent death the moment the scalpel touched her. I already let her go. If you leave too, what will I have left? 10 seconds. No breath. No response. No hope. Then Ash shuddered. A small twitch. Barely visible in the muscles of his hind leg. One pulse. Then his whole body tensed. Itch-itch-itch-itch-ar, itch-itch-itch-itch. A breath escaped, damp, heavy, ragged, but alive. Not a machine rebooting. But a creature truly returning from the dark. Nora jerked up. Her eyes oozed bloodshot. Body frozen, yet still able to whisper. You came back. You really came back. She pressed her hand to Ash's neck. The pulse was faint, but real. No celebration. No hands thrown to the sky. Just two beings. One who had fallen into the void, and the other who pulled them both out with a single thread called last hope. And just then, her phone buzzed. One bar appeared. She unlocked it. The screen lit up. One press, and rescue would come. She looked at Ash. His breath, shallow but steady. His head tilted gently toward her, not afraid, not confused. Just waiting. Nora stared at the call button. Then, she turned the screen off. I'm not calling anyone. There's no one left I need to prove anything to. I'll take you there myself. The sound of tire chains grinding against the ice. The truck veered slightly left. Nora jerked the wheel, both hands clenched like iron. On the dashboard, the anti-lock brake warning light blinked red again and again. Headlights pierced the thick snow, lighting up only a few feet ahead. She couldn't see anything but white. But she kept driving. Didn't ease off the gas. Didn't stop checking the rearview mirror. Behind her, Ash. Lying motionless on a field tarp in the truck bed, head tilted to one side. No movement. No sound. But she knew he was still alive. And she knew only she was keeping him that way. The map on her phone showed a faded fork in the road. Station 47, Training Zone 6. Below the icon, decommissioned area. Nora flicked the blinker. Turned in. No hesitation. She'd been here before. 3 years ago, when she was still a mobile field vet for the Federal Army. This had been a training camp for warhorses, built for the harshest combat zones. Now, everything was layered in dust and time. Rusting tin-roofed cabins. Collapsed fencing. Faded signage. Only one thing was different. A fire was burning. Smoke coiled upward in thin strands, spiraling into a leaden sky like whispers from memory. She stopped the truck. Got out. The cold wind sliced across her mouth. The blood on her cheek hadn't flaked off yet. An old man was shoveling snow with a wooden scoop. 70s, at least. Back slightly hunched. His military-issue coat faded nearly to gray. She approached, steadying her steps to hide the urgency. "Excuse me. I need warm water. And a way to heat up in 4-bag. I have a horse, he's in critical condition." The old man didn't answer. He simply turned and looked straight toward the truck bed. His eyes rested there for less than 2 seconds. Then his whole body froze. The shovel slipped into the snow without a sound. His hands clenched, trembling. "No way," his voice cracked, hoarse and broken. It can't be him." Nora stepped back slightly. "You know him?" The man said nothing. He just moved toward the truck bed. Slowly. Like someone walking toward their own grave. He lifted the tarp gently, his eyes fixed on the scar running diagonally beneath Ash's neck. Ghost 12. One phrase. It dropped like a verdict. Nora stood still. "Ghost, what?" "Ghost 12, he repeated. Horse number 12 in the Ghost series. Nickname taken from the covert unit. The kind that never makes it into the press. Doesn't show up in any public stats. He served in Syria. Night raids. No riders. Autonomous missions." The man leaned on the truck bed, catching his breath. He survived the Kazir slope blast. The entire unit, 14 men, dead. Only him and a half-drunk soldier made it out, because this horse dragged him out from the rubble for 3 hours. "And after that?" Nora asked. "The soldier died from infection. Ghost 12 was sent back to Nevada. But the records say he died in a transport accident, right?" The old man neither nodded nor shook his head. He lit a cigarette. The flame flickered in his shaking hands. "I was the one assigned to receive the body. But that day, the truck was late. There was no body. Then, all the paperwork got sealed. Classified. 3 days later, they told me, this isn't your concern. Forget it. No one brought it up again. Until now." Nora turned to look at Ash. His back was rough. His frame thin. Legs bandaged. Alive, yet torn out of collective memory like something no one wanted to keep. "Who dumped him in the forest?" she asked. "And why?" The old man was silent for a long time. Then spoke, his voice low, like wind hissing through broken planks. Because he knew something they wanted buried. Because after Khazir, he went back and refused to leave when his partner was left behind. That horse wasn't just a tool. He did what the surviving soldiers couldn't. He went back into the field of corpses to pull someone out. He didn't follow orders. He followed what was right. Nora felt her throat tighten. Not from emotion. From anger. And for that, they tried to erase him from history. The old man nodded slowly, his eyes glinting with bitterness. Not everyone wants to keep the stories that make them ashamed. 3 weeks. Nora didn't live by the days. She lived by the breaths. Morning, checking temperature. Noon, changing dressings, disinfecting wounds. Afternoon, massaging atrophied muscles. Night, listening to his breathing. Steady. Sometimes labored. Sometimes thin as thread. No calendar. No phone. No outside world. Only her. And Ash. Inside a tent pitched deep in an unnamed mountain range where no one could find them unless they had a life-or-death reason to try. Ash healed slowly. But surely. For the first time in countless nights, he stood on his own. Unsteady, yes, but his eyes. Still open. Still watching. Still refusing to be forgotten. She used to think she'd feel joy the moment he could stand again. But in truth, when she saw him upright, no longer needing her, something inside Nora cracked. Like the sound of glass fracturing inside the heart. And then came the dreams. In her dream, she saw Callie. No blood. No operating table. Just an open plain. Wind whispering through her mane. She called out. Callie didn't look back. No anger. No pain. Just leaving. As if she never truly belonged to her. She dreamed of herself sitting in the corner of the tent. Snow falling in heavy sheets outside. Ash stood behind her. Callie stood ahead, but didn't look at her. She looked at Ash. For a long, long time. And then, she turned around. Step by step, disappeared into the forest. Leaving the space where Ash now stood. There was no one left. No Callie. No snow. Just a dark figure, large, steady breathing, standing across from her. No need for names. This time, there was nothing left between them. She woke in the middle of the third night. Sweat soaked her back. Her hand gripped the edge of the blanket like she was holding on to something formless. She opened the tent flap. Snow was falling lightly. Not cold enough to numb, but sharp enough to burn the lungs with every breath. Ash stood 10 steps away. No reins. No fence. Just standing still, facing the mountain pass. That place, that led downward. That place where, if he stepped forward, he would no longer belong to her. Nora didn't call his name. She just watched. Her chest ached dully. Not from the body. But because for the first time in 3 years, she knew she was about to lose something. And there was no reason left to stop it. The next morning, Nora packed away the last of the medicine. She burned the treatment notes she'd written night after night. Then she walked out to Ash. Her hands trembled as she removed the final bandage around his neck. The last wound had healed. I've kept you long enough. Now, you get to choose. No flute. No soft words. Not even a gentle nudge. She just stepped back. 1 step. 2 steps. Then turned away. The wind blew softly. pine needles rustled like a slow, scattered applause. She stepped back inside the tent. Didn't look over her shoulder. Didn't hesitate. For the first time, she let go and didn't regret it. 4:48 a.m. No alarm. No dream to warn her. Only a hollow in the air. Tiny, delicate, like a heartbeat that had just stopped. Nora woke not because of sound, but because of absence. She turned her head. Ash was no longer lying in the corner of the tent. The thin blanket over the straw still held his warmth. A few strands of horsehair clung to the fabric, and a faint trail of breath had only just faded from the air. She understood. He was ready. Nora wrapped herself in the thickest coat she had and stepped outside. The early morning wind wasn't biting, but just cold enough to slip past her collar and whisper into her chest. It's time. Ash stood before the gate, his gray-black frame now cloaked in a layer of mountain mist. He didn't turn around, didn't move, just stood there, like a statue carved from the dream of someone who once lost everything. The pine gate, built by her own hands, had remained shut for 3 weeks straight, not to imprison, but to wait for the moment someone was ready to open it, without expecting anything to come back. Nora stood behind Ash. No call. No command. She simply placed her hand on the iron latch and pushed. Click. A sound so small, and yet inside her, it echoed like the creak of a door that had been locked for 3 years. Ash didn't rush. He didn't bolt. Didn't snort. Didn't stomp. He just lifted one hoof, as if asking the earth for permission to move forward. One step. Slow. Silent. Then another. And another. No sunlight lit the way. Only the heavy fog slowly swallowing his body. Piece by piece. Until nothing remained. Nora didn't cry. Didn't call out. She just stood still, listening. Not for hoofbeats, but for the growing emptiness inside her chest. Then she knelt. Right there, before the gate, beneath her feet, was a mark. A hoofprint pressed into the cold ground. Not a trail. Not scattered like a fleeing run. But a circle. A single, perfect circle. Complete. Unbroken. As if Ash, before walking away, had turned around once. Not to double check. Not out of regret. But to say goodbye. In the only way a creature who has survived the unspeakable ever could. Nora knelt down. Not out of grief. Not to hold on. But to steady that circle. The final trace of a being once erased. Now choosing to leave as something free. She placed her hand over the cold hoofprint. Whispered, her voice ragged like wind through the pines. Freedom isn't something we keep for ourselves. It's something we give, when we're no longer afraid to lose it. 2 months later, the Buckskin Mountains welcomed their first snow of the season. Thin, cold, and quiet enough to make every memory feel like it was walking back home. Nora no longer lived in a tent. No longer camped near the cliffs. She had reopened her clinic, but this time, not in town. It stood deep in the forest. One morning, while washing a wound on a cat caught in a steel trap, she heard the sound of a car pulling into the yard. It was Ivy, a wildlife photographer and an old friend of Nora's. No greetings. She simply handed Nora a photo, sealed in a weatherproof sleeve. Nora opened it, and her entire world fell still. A photo taken from a distance, blurred in the morning fog. A herd of wild horses moving across a steep rocky slope. Among the brown, chestnut, and white coats, one gray-black horse stood at the front. Large, steady, not fenced in, not guided. He walked straight ahead, as if he had never been held captive. Nora framed the photo, hung it in the center of the reception room. No caption, just a small wooden plaque, hand-carved. You can't undo the past, but you can protect what's still free. Then, one windy afternoon, the phone rang. A deep, older male voice came through, no name given. I just saw that horse. But he's not alone anymore. There's a silver-gray mare beside him. And a foal. Nora gripped the phone tightly. Do you want to know where he's leading them? And then, the line went dead. She didn't call back. She didn't need to. Because part of her already knew. That story is still unfolding. Just not for an audience this time. Some beings aren't meant to stay. They enter our lives to remind us how deeply we once longed to be free. And then they leave. No thanks. No farewell. But what they leave behind is a space that cannot be filled. A touch that never fades in the deepest place within us. You can't rewrite the past. You can't save everyone. You can't hold on to everything just because you once loved it. But you can. Stop repeating the mistake of clinging to what was meant to be let go. Because sometimes, loving a being doesn't mean saving it. It means giving it the right to save itself. If this story made you pause, even for a single breath, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone may be holding on too tightly to something that's meant to be free. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. There's always someone here, reading and listening. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, one story is all it takes to help someone let go and move on.